They thought you'd stay silent forever, that you'd keep shrinking, doubting yourself, breaking behind closed doors, while they smiled in public. But what they didn't know is that the soul they tried to destroy was never ordinary. You were chosen. And when a narcissist messes with the chosen one, they don't just start a fight, they activate a mission. This isn't just another story of betrayal. This is the part where manipulation meets divine timing, and the one who is underestimated rises in power, clarity, and purpose. If you've ever felt like someone tried to rewrite your truth, if you've ever been betrayed so deeply it cracked something open inside you, then this video was meant for you. Stay with me till the end, because the shift you're about to witness, it might just mirror your own. And hey, if any part of this hits your spirit, drop a comment below like, "I'm waking up." Or subscribe so you don't miss the next truth bomb, because this journey is just beginning. They never come for the loudest. They come for the ones who carry something quiet, something rare. The chosen ones don't announce themselves with power or pride. They simply are. And that's exactly why the narcissist sees them. There's a spiritual magnetism, almost invisible to the eye, but undeniable to the soul. A peace that unsettles chaos. A light that exposes what's hiding in the dark. And that light, that calm, that sense of inner knowing, it doesn't sit well with those who thrive off control. Narcissists aren't drawn to the weak. They are drawn to the ones who make them feel exposed, even in silence. You walk into a room and shift the atmosphere without trying. You look them in the eyes and they feel seen in a way they've spent years avoiding. And the moment a narcissist feels seen, not adored, not worshipped, but seen, the war begins. Not always with drama, sometimes with charm, smiles, patience. They mirror your light just long enough to earn your trust. They study your softness, your empathy, your need to help, your patterns of forgiveness, and they slowly begin rewriting the script around you. Why? Because they need to win over what they cannot be. They don't just want to be close to you. They want to possess you, control the narrative, and reduce your power to something they can handle. You became a target not because something was wrong with you, but because something was right with you. Chosen ones often carry pain from an early age, not because they deserved it, but because their souls are wired to grow through it. Empaths, old souls, spiritual warriors, they walk through fire and still manage to see beauty. And that resilience confuses the narcissist. Because narcissists build false strength through image and performance. You build yours through truth and endurance. And that difference scares them. They sense something eternal about you. Like you're protected. Like life bends around you in strange ways. Like people gravitate toward you without you having to try. And that spiritual glow, that inner knowing, threatens their illusion of superiority. So they plot in silence. Not always with cruelty at first. Often with flattery, emotional intimacy, promises, spiritual language, even soulmate-level chemistry. But deep down, the narcissist's goal is to weaken the chosen one's connection to their source, to distort the clarity, to shake the identity, to poison the intuition that would normally protect you. They want to distract you from your purpose by tying your worth to their validation. That's why they give you just enough to stay, then pull it away to make you chase it. They create confusion, not because you're foolish, but because you're trusting. And if they can make you doubt your own instincts, they can control the game. But here's what the narcissist never expects, that the chosen one awakens. Sometimes slowly, through heartbreak and solitude. Other times suddenly, like a veil being ripped from the soul. But it always comes. The moment you remember who you are. The moment you realize the pain wasn't your punishment, it was your training ground. The moment you stop explaining yourself, stop overgiving, stop dimming your light to make someone else comfortable. The narcissist will feel it before you even speak it. The shift in your energy, the boundaries, the silence, the peace that returns without needing their permission. Because here's the truth. Chosen ones were never meant to stay stuck in cycles. They were meant to break them. You weren't sent here to be perfect, but you were sent to be powerful, in your softness, in your knowing, in your truth. You see, narcissists feed off attention, fear, control, but your power doesn't come from any of that. Your power comes from something deeper, divine alignment. That's what they try to separate you from. Not just people or self-esteem, but your alignment, your purpose, your connection to something higher. And when that reconnects, nothing can stop you. It's important to know, too, that this story doesn't end with revenge or ego. The chosen one doesn't rise to prove anything to the narcissist. The rise is quiet. It's spiritual. It's sacred. It's about coming back to yourself, the version of you before the lies, before the emotional games, before you doubted your worth. And that version doesn't seek applause. That version just lives. In peace. In truth. In alignment. And while the narcissist will rage, smay, guilt trip, or try to come back changed, you no longer need to engage. Because you're not playing that game anymore. You don't need closure from someone who was never honest. You don't need justice from someone who wouldn't understand it. The peace you feel now, that's the justice. And the life you go on to live without them, that's the legacy. Chosen ones are often tested through betrayal, not because they deserve the pain, but because their purpose is revealed through it. You weren't chosen to be broken. You were chosen to remember, to wake up, to shake off every lie, every limitation, every false mirror they held up in front of you. And now, you move differently. You speak with clarity. You protect your energy. You trust your intuition. You don't explain your glow. You just let it shine. And anyone who can't handle that was never meant to stand beside it. You were the light they couldn't understand. So they tried to dim it. But instead, they lit the match that awakened the fire within you. It never starts with cruelty. It starts with a smile. A gaze that lingers just a second too long. Words that feel like they were crafted just for you. In the beginning, the narcissist shows up like a dream. Attentive, sensitive, in tune with your needs in a way that feels almost magical. They don't storm into your life. They seep into it, slowly, gently, like warmth after a long winter. You feel seen. You feel chosen. You feel like maybe, just maybe, someone finally understands you. And that's where it begins. Not with harm, but with hope. The kind of hope that catches a chosen one off guard. Because chosen ones, by nature, are deep feelers, healers, givers. You don't open easily, but when you do, it's with your whole heart. And the narcissist knows this. This early phase is known as love bombing, but to the chosen one, it doesn't feel like a bomb. It feels like destiny. You'll hear things like, "I've never met anyone like you," or "We're so alike." It's like we're one soul. They memorize your wounds and dreams, not to protect them, but to use them later. And while it might seem genuine, there's a subtle energy beneath it all, a rush, a need, an urgency that doesn't come from love. It comes from control. Because the narcissist doesn't want to grow with you. They want to own your glow. And they know the easiest way to do that is to make you feel safe enough to hand over your power, willingly. Soon, the compliments become expectations. The attention turns into emotional dependency. You're flattered when they want all your time. You think it means they care deeply. But what you don't realize is they are isolating you. Not always physically. Sometimes just mentally. Your friends don't understand you like I do. You don't need anyone else when you have me. I just want to protect you from the people who drain your energy. It sounds caring, until you wake up one day and realize you're shrinking. Your world is getting smaller. Your voice is quieter. Your light feels dimmer. But you can't quite explain it. That's the trick. Narcissists don't break you with fists. They twist reality until you start questioning yourself. They'll create little moments of confusion. Not big enough to scream abuse, but just enough to make you feel off balance. They'll rewrite conversations. "I never said that. You must be imagining it." They'll twist your reactions. "Wow, you're so sensitive. I was just joking." They'll deny the small betrayals you feel in your gut. "You're overthinking again. You always do this." And because chosen ones are deeply reflective, you pause. You analyze. You take accountability. You try to fix what's wrong with you. But what you don't see is, you're not the problem. You're in a trap built out of confusion and charm. One where every time you reach for clarity, They hand you chaos, wrapped in softness. The most dangerous thing about narcissistic manipulation is that it doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like connection. At first. And that's why it's so hard to leave. Because you're not just walking away from a person. You're walking away from the version of yourself you became with them. A version you might not recognize anymore. Someone who second guesses their instincts. Someone who apologizes for things they didn't do. Someone who's constantly trying to get back to the good times, not realizing those good times were the bait. Because once they know they have you, everything shifts. Suddenly, you're walking on eggshells. Not because you fear them, but because you fear losing them. The love that once felt so certain now feels like a reward you have to earn. You try harder, love deeper, forgive faster, and still, something's missing. That warmth they once gave so freely, now it's rationed out in pieces. It's no longer a gift, it's a currency, one they use to keep you hopeful, even as they slowly rewrite your sense of reality. You begin to feel like you're the only one trying. That maybe you're asking for too much. That maybe love really is supposed to hurt like this. And that's when the control is complete. Not through fear, but through self-doubt. But here's what the narcissist underestimates. The chosen one doesn't stay asleep forever. Somewhere deep within, there's a voice. Faint, but steady. And knowing that whispers, this isn't love. This isn't home. This isn't truth. At first, you ignore it. You don't want to believe it. You hold on tighter. You hope harder. But the voice keeps growing. And eventually, the illusions start to crack. A moment hits differently. A lie no longer lands the same. The charm loses its glow. And that's when something stays inside you. Not rage, not revenge, but remembrance of who you were before the manipulation, of how your spirit used to feel when it wasn't being caged, of the fact that real love doesn't feel like confusion. It feels like freedom. And so, the awakening begins. Quietly, you start questioning more, observing more, pulling back, and the narcissist feels it. Their control starts to slip. So they panic. They love bomb again. They promise change. They cry. They beg. They accuse. They twist. But it's too late. Because once a chosen one sees the game, they don't play it again. You may not leave immediately. You may wrestle with guilt. But the spell is broken. And what they once used to control you, now only exposes them. Because the chosen one isn't just a victim of manipulation. They're a mirror. And the moment you stop doubting your truth, the illusion they built starts to crumble. And here's the part they never saw coming. You weren't just another soul to conquer. You were the soul that would awaken through the very pain they caused. They thought they had power over you. But what they really did was trigger your return to power. Because true love doesn't twist, confuse, or control. It honors. It heals. It expands. And you, dear chosen one, were never meant to stay in a cage built from pretty words. You were meant to fly. It starts slowly. So slowly you don't even realize what's happening. One day, you're laughing freely, sharing your dreams, feeling the fire inside you burn bright. And then, weeks, maybe months later, you're quieter. Your voice feels smaller. You second guess every step. Your world feels dimmer, and you can't quite explain why. That's the isolation phase. Not always physical. Sometimes you're still surrounded by people. But spiritually, emotionally, energetically, you're alone. And that's exactly what the narcissist intended. See, they don't always isolate you by locking you away. They do it by breaking the bridges between you and everything that used to remind you of who you are. They question the people who love you. That friend. They are jealous of you. Your family. They don't really understand your soul like I do. It sounds subtle, even protective. But it's not. It's the beginning of the separation. The goal is simple. To make you dependent on their version of you. Because if you keep connecting with people who speak life into your spirit, you might start waking up again. You might start remembering. And that's dangerous, not to you, but to their control. So they quietly distance you from anything that feeds your light. Your routines, your passions, your outlets of joy, they start fading. And every time you reach for them, the narcissist either criticizes them or makes you feel guilty for needing them. You'd rather paint than spend time with me. Why do you need space? Am I not enough? They mask it as love, but it's really a slow erasure of your identity. And the most painful part is that you begin to cooperate. Not because you're weak, but because you care. You try to adjust, compromise, be less selfish. You believe maybe they're right. Maybe you do need to let go of certain people or patterns to grow together. But in this kind of dynamic, growth isn't mutual. It's sacrificial. And the one doing the sacrificing is always you. Soon, doubt creeps in like a fog. You start questioning the very instincts that once protected you. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe they're the only one who really sees me. But what you don't realize is, you've been cut off from the mirrors that used to reflect your true self. The people who reminded you of your strength. The activities that brought you joy. The quiet moments that once anchored you. All of it, slowly removed, replaced, rewritten. So now, when you feel off, when your soul starts to whisper that something isn't right, you ignore it. Because you've been trained to believe that your feelings can't be trusted. That your emotions are too much. That your light, your natural glow, is somehow selfish, threatening, or wrong. And this is exactly what the narcissist wanted. Not just to be the loudest voice in your life, but the only voice. So when they start to mistreat you, you don't even recognize it as abuse. You call it miscommunication. You take responsibility. You tell yourself, if I just love harder, this will work. But love isn't supposed to silence you. It's not supposed to make you feel like you're always apologizing, always proving, always shrinking. And yet, you keep trying. Because part of you still remembers the beginning, the love bombing, the connection, the sweetness. You keep chasing that version of them, not realizing that version was a mask. This phase is dangerous, because it doesn't feel like chaos. It feels like numbness, like exhaustion, like you're slowly disappearing, and nobody notices, not even you. Your dreams seem distant. Your joy feels artificial. Your spark flickers in and out. You feel like you're surviving inside a life that doesn't quite feel like your own. And the narcissist, they love this version of you. The quieter you become, the more powerful they feel. The more you doubt yourself, the more they define you. And this isn't an accident. It's strategy. Because a chosen one who remembers their power is a threat, but a chosen one who forgets who they are is easier to control. But here's the miracle. Even in isolation, your soul remembers. Even if your mind is confused, your spirit is watching, waiting, whispering. There will be moments, flashes, where something stays inside you. A memory, a dream, a vision. Something that reminds you of who you were before. And even if it's brief, it plants a seed. The narcissist might try to bury it, but that seed is divine. And once it starts to grow, once that whisper becomes a voice, once that voice becomes a roar, everything changes. Because the truth is, you were never alone. You were just disconnected from yourself, from your source, from your light. And the moment you start turning inward, not toward the version of you they built, but the version that's eternal, the power begins to return. The narcissist may still be in the picture. You may still doubt. But the isolation starts to lose its grip. Because light doesn't need permission to rise. It just needs space. And once you give it that, the fog begins to lift. And suddenly, you see it all. The manipulation. The subtle attacks. The moments where your soul screamed, but you silenced it. And you don't feel anger first. You feel grief. Grief for the parts of yourself you abandoned trying to be enough for someone who never saw your worth. But that grief is sacred. It means you're coming back. It means you're remembering. And once a chosen one remembers who they are, nothing can ever fully control them again. So yes, they wanted you alone so you'd forget. But they forgot one thing. Divine souls don't stay lost. They awaken. There comes a moment, subtle, almost silent, where something inside you begins to stay. It doesn't come with fireworks or shouting. It comes with stillness. a sudden discomfort with what once felt normal, a sharp breath in the middle of the night, a single tear during a quiet moment, a thought you can't unthink. At first, it's easy to dismiss. Maybe you've just had a rough day. Maybe you're being too sensitive. Maybe you're imagining things again, or at least that's what you've been trained to believe. But something deeper knows. It knows. The life you're living isn't aligned with the truth of who you are. And no matter how much confusion surrounds you, a whisper begins to push through the fog. That whisper is the beginning of your awakening. See, the spirit doesn't sleep. It watches patiently from within, even when your mind is clouded, even when your heart is tired, even when your soul is buried under layers of fear and manipulation. It waits, not passively, but faithfully, like a lighthouse waiting for the fog to clear. And when the time is right, it sends out signals, divine nudges, a strange dream, a song that hits too deeply, a phrase you overhear from a stranger that feels like a message meant for you. These moments may seem small, but they carry spiritual weight. They are not coincidences. They are callings, signs that your inner world is shifting, preparing you to rise. The narcissist doesn't see it at first. On the outside, you still play your part. You still nod, still smile, still apologize when you shouldn't. But inside, your soul is waking up. The person they once manipulated with ease, she's listening now, not to them, but to the divine. And that's when the fear begins to shift. No longer is it you're afraid of losing them. Now, on a deep level, they sense they are losing control over you. They'll respond with intensity, love bombing, guilt tripping, sudden affection, desperate apologies, anything to drown out the voice that's beginning to rise inside you. But here's what they can't stop. The alarm has already gone off. It doesn't mean you wake up all at once. Sometimes the process is slow. Sometimes you open your eyes just to close them again, not quite ready for what you see. But every time you hear that whisper, the one that tells you this isn't right, this isn't real, this isn't love, the spirit gains ground. And each time you listen, even for a second, your truth gets louder. It's not just self-awareness, it's spiritual alignment. Something inside you remembers your mission, not in words, not even in thoughts, but in feeling. That deep, soul-level knowing that you weren't sent here to beg for crumbs of love. You were sent to embody something sacred. And as that truth grows, the fog begins to lift. Slowly, gently, you start asking new questions. Why do I always feel drained after being around them? Why do I have to sacrifice my peace to keep this connection alive? Why does my spirit feel heavy, even in silence? These aren't just thoughts. These are spiritual prompts, evidence that your inner compass is retaining, that the silence you've been living in isn't peace, it's suppression. And now the suppression is cracking. And here's the thing, the divine never shouts. It never forces. It simply presents the truth, over and over, until you're ready to accept it. That's why the whispers feel like echoes of your highest self. They don't judge you. They don't rush you. They simply hold space for you to return. And every time you listen, even for a second, you step back into alignment. That's the power of the spiritual alarm. It doesn't always come with clarity, but it always comes with conviction. Eventually, something breaks. It might be a moment of stillness, or a moment of chaos. It might be a line they cross, or a truth you can't unsee. But whatever it is, it shifts your spirit forever. And suddenly, the whisper becomes a voice. Then a roar, then a knowing so loud you can no longer deny it. You have to leave, heal, rise, and reclaim what was always yours. That's the point of no return. And it doesn't always look like walking out the door. Sometimes it's an internal exit, a withdrawal of energy, a reclaiming of your attention, your boundaries, your worth. They'll feel the shift, even if you say nothing. Because your energy, once tied to their control, is now rooted in your purpose, and you begin to glow differently, quietly, but unmistakably, not because everything's perfect now, but because you're aligned. You're no longer trying to fit a sacred soul into a broken system. You're no longer betraying your spirit to meet someone else's emotional needs. The divine whispers have done their job. They brought you home. Back to your light. Back to your center. Back to your voice. So when people ask, how did you finally wake up? You won't always have the words, because it wasn't logic. It wasn't a book. It wasn't advice. It was something deeper, something sacred, something eternal. It was the spirit inside you, roaring back to life. There's a moment in every toxic connection where the narcissist gets too comfortable. Their mask starts to slip, not because they are slipping up, but because they think they've won. They believe their charm has sealed the deal, that their manipulations have rewired your thinking, that your silence is proof of their dominance. But what they don't realize, and what they never expect, is that your silence was not surrender. It was observation. You were not bowing your head in defeat. You were watching closely. You were studying patterns, connecting timelines, replaying conversations in your mind like puzzle pieces that suddenly began to fit. You were learning them in ways they could never learn you, because they are too self-absorbed to see beyond their reflection. In their arrogance, they mistook your stillness for submission. But your stillness was sacred. It was strategy. It was spiritual alignment. And soon, it would become your strength. Narcissists feed off of reaction. They live for drama, for the energy exchange that comes when they push your buttons and pull your strings. When you argue, cry, chase, or try to explain yourself, they feel powerful. Every reaction you give them is like currency. But what happens when you stop reacting? When you go quiet? Not because you're broken, but because you're building. They don't know what to do with that. Your silence terrifies them, but they don't admit it. Instead, they mock you. They say you've changed. They call you cold, ungrateful, too sensitive, or distant. But deep down, they know something has shifted. They just don't know how much. Because when a chosen one starts to awaken, it doesn't look like rage. It looks like peace. Still, calm, but charged with fire beneath the surface. They thought they silenced your voice, but they didn't know you were listening to another one. The quiet voice inside that had been whispering all along. That divine whisper. The one telling you this isn't love. This isn't safety. This isn't where your story ends. And while the narcissist was busy rehearsing their next lie or lining up their next supply, you were having silent conversations with your soul. You were rediscovering your worth, remembering your light. You were finally seeing that their love wasn't love at all. It was ownership, designed to tame your spirit, not honor it. This is where the shift begins. This is where their overconfidence becomes their greatest mistake. Because while they saw your silence as a green light to keep controlling you, you were quietly collecting your power. You stopped explaining yourself, not because you had nothing to say, but because you realized they were never listening. You stopped defending yourself, not because you were guilty, but because you understood your peace was more valuable than their chaos. You stopped trying to be understood by someone who only ever twisted your words. And once you stop needing to be understood by them, they can no longer control you. To the narcissist, your silence was boring. It disrupted the game. They could no longer predict your moves or feed off your energy. And that's when the cracks in their illusion start to show. They may accuse you of shutting down or being cold-hearted. But the truth is, your silence wasn't emotional absence. It was spiritual presence. You were becoming grounded, clear, focused. The fog they created was lifting, and with every quiet moment, your vision sharpened. You began to notice the patterns, the cycle of love bombing followed by devaluation, the way they twisted your compassion into weakness, the way they played victim when you confronted the truth. And slowly, the spell began to break. And here's the thing, narcissists aren't afraid of strong people. They're afraid of awakened people. People who see through the illusion. People who no longer need their approval, their attention, or their fake apologies. Once you stop playing their game, you become dangerous to them. Not because you hurt them, but because you no longer need them. Your silence becomes a mirror they can't look into, because it reflects everything they've tried to hide. Their lies, their insecurities, their lack of true power. And it enrages them. They may lash out. They may beg. They may try to love bomb you all over again. But it's too late. Because now, you've seen the truth. and you can't unsee it. The chosen one's awakening is quiet at first. It's not an explosion, it's an internal shift. A remembering, a subtle but powerful return to self. And once it starts, there's no going back. The narcissist may still be performing, still trying to bait you, still pretending nothing has changed. But inside, you've already left. You're already gone. You've stepped into a higher awareness where their manipulations can't reach. You've begun healing not just from them, but from the lies you once believed about yourself. The lie that you had to earn love. The lie that you were too much or not enough. The lie that their approval was something to chase. They thought you were weak because you didn't fight back. But you weren't avoiding battle. You were choosing a higher war. One they could never understand. A spiritual war. A soul war. You weren't retreating. You were realigning. You were trading noise for discernment. Trading survival mode for clarity. And now, your silence isn't empty. It's full. Full of knowing. Full of strength. Full of truth. The kind of truth that doesn't need to be shouted, only lived. And so, when the narcissist finally realizes they can't reach you anymore, when they sense that your spirit has left the space, even if your body is still there, that's when the panic sets in. But by then, it's too late. Because the storm they feared, it wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It was you, rising, remembering, reclaiming. The very thing they tried to control has now become what sets you free. So let them believe you were weak. Let them misjudge your silence. Because the power that's awakening in you doesn't need to prove itself. It simply is. You were never the fragile one. You were the watcher, the listener, the storm in waiting. And now, you move not with fear, but with divine authority. The game is over, and your light, once dimmed, now burns too brightly to ever be controlled again. It doesn't happen all at once. The awakening creeps in slowly, like dawn slipping through a window that's been closed for too long. At first, it's just a flicker, a memory of laughter that didn't come with conditions, a flash of confidence before it was drained by someone else's control. The chosen one sits in the quiet aftermath of chaos, sifting through the ashes of who they were told to be. And in those ashes, something glows. A voice they almost forgot. One that says, "You were never meant to live this small." This moment is more than recovery. It's a sacred uprising. Not loud, not vengeful, just certain. The fog of manipulation begins to lift, and what was once confusion starts making sense. Every lie whispered by the narcissist starts unraveling. You're too sensitive. You remember it wrong. No one else would love you. Those words used to echo like truth inside the chosen one's mind. But now, they sound like what they really were. Tools of control. And each time the chosen one hears one of those old phrases, a new thought rises up and pushes back. That was never me. That was their fear, disguised as my flaw. And slowly, the chosen one remembers who they were before they were made to forget. They remember the light they carried, not the kind that drew applause or attention, but the quiet, undeniable light that made others feel safe, seen, and inspired. The kind of light narcissists fear. That's why they tried to put it out. Not because it was weak, but because it was powerful. That light couldn't be bought. It couldn't be bent to serve someone else's ego. So the narcissist did what narcissists always do. They tried to possess it, diminish it, rewire it. But light like that, you can dim it, yes. You can bury it beneath manipulation, trauma, and doubt. But you can't destroy it. Not when it was placed there by something higher. The awakening is messy. It brings grief, because the chosen one realizes how much of themselves they gave away trying to be loved. It brings anger, righteous, holy anger, not at who they are, but at how long they were convinced they were broken. It brings clarity. They start to see the patterns in the manipulation, the charm that came before the control, the isolation disguised as care, the constant shifting of blame. And every realization cracks the false mirror the narcissist held up in front of them. But more importantly, the awakening brings remembrance of dreams, of intuition, of spiritual power. Things the narcissist mocked, minimized, or twisted into shame. The The chosen one begins to hear their own voice again, and for the first time in a long time, it's louder than the narcissist's. There's no rush to prove anything. No need to retaliate. Just a rising, slow, sacred, unstoppable. And the narcissist feels it too. Even if they pretend not to, they sense the shift in energy, the distance, the grounded silence. Narcissists panic when they are no longer able to provoke you, because your peace is their powerlessness. And when the chosen one reclaims their peace, they become untouchable. Not because they are perfect, but because they finally remembered who they are. And who they are was never meant to be defined by someone else's projections. They were never too much, or too emotional, or too difficult to love. They were chosen, and that calling was not handed to them by another person. It was given to them by the divine, the same divine presence that gently whispers to them in the dark, saying, "You are still mine," even after all that pain, especially after all that pain. Because the awakening isn't just about leaving the narcissist behind. It's about returning to the sacred path that was always waiting. So, they rise. Quietly. Intentionally. The chosen one doesn't need to announce it. Their energy speaks louder than their words ever could. They stop explaining themselves to people who only listen to twist their truth. They stop begging for crumbs from those who couldn't see their worth. They stop shrinking. And with every step forward, the past loses a little more power. The healing isn't linear. Some days still hurt. But even on the hardest days, the chosen one walks with a new kind of strength. One that can't be taken, only remembered. They begin to create again, dream again, live again. They reconnect with people who reflect their light instead of trying to steal it. And they protect that light with new boundaries, not built out of fear, but from love, for themselves. Because once a chosen one awakens, there's no going back. The spell is broken. The false narratives dissolve. And in their place, truth, freedom, and a quiet, sacred fire that no longer asks for permission to burn. This isn't just healing. It begins quietly. At first, you think it's just coincidence. A number repeating everywhere you look. A line in a song that echoes the exact words you needed to hear. Or a stranger mentioning something that sounds like a direct answer to a question you've been carrying in silence. But slowly, you begin to realize this isn't chance. It's alignment. After the darkness you've walked through, after the isolation, the manipulation, the grief of forgetting your own light, something begins to shift. It's not loud, not dramatic. It's subtle, yet undeniable. And it feels like the universe, the divine, the source, whatever you call it, has been waiting for this moment to speak directly to your soul. You start to notice signs, symbols, dreams that feel more real than waking life. Numbers like 111, 444, 911 showing up on clocks, receipts, license plates, as if time itself is reaching out to get your attention. And these signs don't just show up, they start speaking. Patterns form. Dreams carry messages. You feel guided, even when you don't understand where you're going yet. The fog that once clouded your thoughts begins to lift, and with it, the confusion they wrapped around your spirit starts to unravel. It's not just clarity, it's a sense of divine timing. You begin remembering who you were before the lies, but more than that, you start understanding why you had to endure the darkness. It wasn't punishment, it was preparation. The storm didn't come to destroy you. It came to awaken you. People from your past resurface. Some to test you. Some to remind you of who you are. And others, complete strangers, show up and speak to you as if they've known your soul for centuries. These are the messengers. And they arrive when the mission returns. Because you didn't just survive the narcissist. You survived a spiritual war you didn't even realize you were fighting. And now that the veil is lifting, you're being re-equipped, realigned, recalled. The signs aren't just for comfort. They're instructions. Gentle nudges pulling you back to your path. The one you were born to walk before the deception began. The dreams become vivid. The coincidences become divine appointments. Even nature begins to respond. Birds cross your path in perfect timing. The wind speaks when you're asking for confirmation. A feather falls at your feet when your spirit starts to doubt again. These are not accidents. They are reminders that you are not alone, that you were never forgotten, that even in the silence, your spirit guides, your ancestors, your angels, they were all watching, waiting, guarding you from what you couldn't yet see. There's a power that comes with this phase. Not loud power, not arrogant power, but sacred, rooted, steady power. It doesn't scream, it knows. Because once you realize the universe is speaking to you, for you, and through you, you no longer chase validation. You no longer explain your intuition. You just listen. You follow the breadcrumbs. You trust the redirection. You surrender to the signs. And in doing so, you begin to walk in a rhythm that feels ancient and destined. And here's the thing, the narcissist will feel it too. They may not know why, but they'll sense the shift. Suddenly, their manipulation loses its grip. Their charm doesn't land. Their presence, once dominating, becomes irrelevant. Because now your spirit is louder than their games. They mistook your silence for weakness, but they didn't know what happens when a chosen one is reawakened. When your mission reactivates, your energy becomes untouchable. You become too aligned to be deceived, too protected to be used, too aware to be trapped again. Divine intervention isn't always lightning bolts or miracles that part sees. Sometimes it's a gut feeling so strong you can't ignore it. A dream that keeps repeating until you finally act. A moment of peace in the middle of your storm, like the Creator is saying, keep going. You're almost there. The universe speaks in a language deeper than words. And when you start hearing it, you stop looking for answers in the noise. Everything that once confused you begins to make sense. Not all at once, but in waves. And those waves are sacred. They carry the codes your soul came here to remember. The signs are a love letter from the divine. A reminder that your pain wasn't random. That your survival wasn't luck. That your awakening has been written in the stars for lifetimes. You weren't just chosen to survive. You were chosen to return. Because now, you don't just walk with awareness. You walk with wisdom, with presence, with the authority of someone who was buried but rose again. And the narcissist, they may try again. They may come back with new tactics, softer words, different faces. But this time, you see through the mask. Because the signs have trained your spirit. The synchronicities have sharpened your vision. You now know the difference between attention and presence, between love and control, between charm and truth. And maybe you won't even need to confront them. Maybe your elevation will speak louder than any revenge. Maybe your growth, your light, your peace, will become the loudest thing in the room. Narcissists don't expect you to evolve. They expect you to stay wounded. But when divine timing steps in, when the messengers arrive, when the signs start pointing forward, there's no going back. Your spirit is in motion. Your mission has returned. And this time, you're fully awake for it. Because you were never just meant to heal. You were meant to rise and lead. And now, the signs that once felt random are forming a map. Follow it. Trust it. You're not just recovering. You're resurrecting. There comes a moment in every chosen one's journey where the pain no longer numbs you. It sharpens you. A moment when the illusions start to fade and the manipulation no longer works. When the lies that once held you hostage begin to sound hollow. You don't even remember the exact second it happens. But it's like a veil lifts. You're no longer drowning in the chaos they created. You're standing still in it, fully awake, heart pounding not from fear, but from the echo of a forgotten truth. You were never meant to live like this. The courage to walk away doesn't come from sudden strength. It comes from quiet clarity, the kind that builds slowly, day by day, moment by moment, every time your soul whispers, "This isn't who you are." At first, you stayed because you wanted to be enough. You believed if you just loved harder, tried harder, gave more, they'd finally see your worth. But that's the trap. The narcissist doesn't want your healing. They feed on your striving. They dress control as connection, gaslight your intuition, and call it love. They keep you wrapped in cycles of hope and hurt. Because as long as you're exhausted, you're easier to manage. But one day, The exhaustion becomes sacred. One day, your tired soul says, "No more." And that single breath of rebellion becomes a roar in the spirit. You realize that peace is no longer a luxury. It's a necessity. And choosing it means walking away from the very thing that tried to convince you you'd never survive without it. The narcissist will call you selfish, cold, delusional. They'll twist your truth and throw it back at you like it's broken glass, because they can't handle the one thing they never expected: your clarity. They thought they'd buried you under confusion forever. But here you are, rising with steady feet, not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself enough to leave. And that's what they never prepared for. They never imagined you'd stop reacting, stop defending, stop showing up to battles that drained you. But that's the power of divine awakening. It doesn't need drama to declare freedom. It just leaves. Quietly, powerfully, completely. When a chosen one walks away, it's not an escape, it's a return. A return to your voice, your mission, your inner sanctuary. The chains weren't just emotional, they were spiritual. Every manipulation was meant to pull you from your divine assignment. And breaking free is more than self-respect. It's obedience to your calling. You walk away not just from a person, but from a pattern, a lifetime of shrinking, of second-guessing, of tolerating what you were never meant to endure. You stop explaining yourself and start becoming yourself. And yes, it's terrifying, because letting go of the pain also means letting go of the story you once clung to for meaning. You grieve the dream, you mourn the potential, but then something beautiful happens. The silence that once scared you becomes sacred ground. You begin to hear your own thoughts again, not the ones they planted, but the ones you buried. And underneath the rubble of who they told you to be, you start to remember who you actually are. Not broken, not too much, not hard to love, but chosen, appointed. There's a quiet power in choosing peace, in no longer chasing chaos just to feel alive. The world may not understand your choice. People may question why you left when everything looked fine on the outside, but they didn't see the soul wounds, the quiet despair, the slow unraveling of your light. You did, and that's enough. You saw it, you felt it, you lived it, and now you're leaving it. Not because you hate them, not because you're bitter, but because your purpose began to speak louder than your pain. Your calling started ringing louder than their chaos. You realized that your destiny can't be fulfilled in a cage. And no matter how beautiful the trap, it's still a trap. Walking away isn't weakness. It's sacred strength. The kind that doesn't need applause, only alignment. And as you step forward, maybe shaking, maybe uncertain, the path will start to clay. The fog will lift. The signs will show. Because when a chosen one breaks free from a narcissist, the universe moves in their favor. You start attracting clarity instead of confusion, love instead of control, expansion instead of limitation. Because when you choose yourself, heaven echoes the decision. Divine timing clicks into place. Purpose wakes up, and you remember, you were never lost, just dated. So if you've walked away, know this: you didn't fail. You evolved. You outgrew a story that was never yours to carry. You broke a generational cycle that others were too afraid to face. You proved to yourself and to the spirit world that you are no longer available for anything that dims your light. And as you keep walking, don't look back for closure. You don't need it. The freedom you feel, that is the closure. The peace in your chest, that is the proof. You didn't leave because you were weak. You left because a destiny was calling, and you finally answered. There comes a moment, sharp and silent, when a narcissist realizes they've lost control over you. And it doesn't come with grand explosions or theatrical exits. It comes in your stillness, in the quiet, firm energy of someone who no longer needs to react. That's what terrifies them the most, your detachment. Because narcissists feed off attention, control, emotional reactions. So when you stop answering, stop defending, stop explaining yourself, they begin to unravel. First, it starts with confusion. They wonder if you're bluffing. They'll test your silence with little jabs, a message, a guilt trip, a fake apology wrapped in old manipulation. But when that doesn't work, when they sense that you've truly seen through them, the real backlash begins. They can't control you anymore. So now they'll try to control how others see you. This is the smear campaign, and it's brutal, especially if you're someone with a good heart. Suddenly, people you once trusted start to look at you differently. Lies are spread, half-truths twisted. They'll say you're the unstable one, you're the manipulator, you are always difficult to love. They project everything they are onto you, because the narcissist's greatest fear is exposure. Not just exposure to the world, but to themselves. You've become a mirror they can't look into without seeing the truth, and instead of changing, they shatter the mirror. That's why they attack your name. It's a desperate attempt to reclaim power over the narrative. But this time, it doesn't stick. Because you've changed. You're not the same person they once manipulated. You've grown into someone rooted, grounded, aligned. And people can feel that. You don't even need to defend yourself anymore. Your energy speaks louder than their lies. The peace on your face, the calm in your spirit, the strength in your steps, all of it tells a story they can't erase. That's what drives them mad. They see you shining in spaces they thought they'd dim forever. They watch you reclaim joy, purpose, relationships, and a deeper sense of identity. And they can't reach you anymore. Not with guilt. Not with fear. Not even with nostalgia. Still, they will try. They might come back, playing victim. I've changed, they'll whisper. Let's start fresh. But you know now, they don't miss you. They miss the power they once had over you. That's what this backlash is all about. Not love. Not closure. Just desperation disguised as sincerity. And the more they realize you're truly free, the harder they'll scramble. They'll stalk your social media, ask mutual friends about you, even send others to test the waters. But deep down, they already know they lost you the moment you found yourself. This phase is difficult, not because you doubt your decision, but because you begin to see just how deep their manipulation ran. You look back at moments you once blamed yourself for, and you see the gaslighting clearly, the silent treatments, the guilt, the sabotage disguised as care. You see the patterns now. And what's most heartbreaking is realizing how long you lived in survival mode, how long you bent yourself to keep the peace, to earn love, to not be abandoned. But here's the thing, your awakening threatens their illusion. Because if you can break free, then others might too. And narcissists rely on illusion to survive. So they'll paint your freedom as rebellion. They'll make your strength look like betrayal. But don't flinch. Don't step down from your healing to explain it. You are not obligated to shrink just because someone else refuses to grow. You're not responsible for the version of you that lives in their head. You owe them no closure, no explanation, no invitation back into your light. And that is your true power now. The refusal to re-enter a cycle you were never meant to survive. You didn't walk away because you were weak. You walked away because your spirit remembered who you are. And that memory is what terrifies them. They don't fear losing you. They fear the empowered version of you. The you that doesn't chase, doesn't argue, doesn't fall for the same tricks. They fear the version of you that has boundaries, that chooses peace over chaos, and truth over illusion. And while they may rage louder, smear harder, or play victim more convincingly than ever, it's all noise. Your soul knows the difference now. The truth doesn't need to scream. It just stands. And so do you. Let the backlash come. Let them twist stories. Let them tremble in their confusion. Because they still don't get it. You didn't leave for revenge. You didn't walk away with hatred. You left because you had to honor the sacred calling on your life. You left because peace is your birthright. You left because staying small to keep someone comfortable was never your true purpose. This is not just the end of their control. It's the beginning of your liberation. And from this point on, every attack they launch will only reveal more of who they truly are, and more of who you finally become. A chosen one, awakened, unshakable, and completely out of reach.